Welcome back into the channel and welcome in for another divisional positional tier list. Today we move into the NFC West. I appreciate all the support you guys have shown on these videos, as it's kind of been the main anchoring series on the channel throughout the month of July. This is our last NFC division that we got to go into. Then we're hopping into the AFC. But let us start with quarterback, and I think no surprise here, Matthew Stafford is the best quarterback in the NFC West at this point in time. I think you could seriously make the case that in your mind, Matthew Stafford is still a top 5 quarterback in all of football. To me, he's a top 3 arm talent in football. Down by 5 to 6 points, 2 minutes to go, got to drive down the field. There's only a couple of guys that I'd really rather have the ball in their hands other than Matthew Stafford. We saw what he did in the snow versus Philly, one Jalen Carter sack away from potentially winning that game. And who knows, maybe the Rams are winning another Super Bowl in a very short period of time. I still think Matt Stafford can absolutely sling it. Brock Purdy. I got Brock Purdy at number 2 in this division, and I don't think it's particularly close. I think Brock Purdy is somewhere in the 12 to 16 quarterback range. And I know there's some people that will love Brock Purdy that say that I'm being a hater there. I think there's certainly the potential for him to move up to be a top 10 quarterback this year. I think he has all the tools to do so. I just love to see him put it together this upcoming season. Brock has really improved ever since he's come into the league. I think each and every season, despite the team in 2 years ago being so much better than the team last year, I do think Brock's mobility has shown, his ability to extend plays, and really his football IQ, running that Shanahan offense with all the play action, with all the motion. He is really, really solid at that stuff. Then I'm gonna take Kyler Murray at 3 and Sam Darnold at 4. And honestly, you could flip-flop them if you wanted to. They're really close to each other in my rankings. They're certainly in the same tier if we were to do a tier list. I lean Kyler just because at his peak, I do think he's a better football player than Sam Darnold. And I do think a lot of Darnold's success last year was a product of Kevin O'Connell and that Minnesota Vikings system. Maybe I'm wrong there, and these guys could flip-flop because Kyler's never had the season that Sam Darnold has had. But I also don't think Sam Darnold has had, the high peak games that Kyler has had. Like Kyler's game last year, week 2 versus the Rams, was one of the better quarterback games that I saw all season. So it's really tough for me to divvy out these two, because if Kyler could be his best self all year round, he'd be a top 10 guy. He's inconsistent. And for Darnold, it's last year was the first great year we've seen him have. Other than that, it's been a lot of mediocre. So, in terms of consistency game to game, Darnold had Kyler beat last year, but consistency over career, it's obviously Kyler. So debate it if you want, but I think that this is what I'm sticking with. Next, we move to running backs, and I'm going to take the Niners here, number 1. Listen, I don't know what Christian McCaffrey is going to be, and I'll judge Christian McCaffrey as a worse version of the McCaffrey we know if this year he still doesn't have it. Last year, injury riddled. 2 years ago, offensive player of the year. I'm still going to choose to believe that offensive player of the year, Christian McCaffrey, is in there somewhere. And when that guy is playing football, man, you're talking about a no doubt top 5 back in all of football as well. I like their backfield room. I like Garendo. I love Jordan James out of Oregon. I think he's going to be able to come in and be the Jordan Mason for that team. And, if McCaffrey goes down, I'd expect him to get the workload. I think it's a good running back room. If you factor in Juszczyk in the running back section, I guess that just adds more. But the Niners, to me, have the best running back room in the division. I'm going to put Seattle here at number 2. I really like the running back tandem of Ken Walker and Zach Charbonnet. When Ken Walker misses a couple games, Zach Charbonnet, there's just no fall off. These are two very talented running backs. Both, have some shiftiness to them. Both have some bruiserness to them. Both would be better behind better offensive lines, and we'll get to that with Seattle, but I think they're both very, very talented. I'm then going to go with the Rams. Kyren Williams, I think he's really, really solid. Blake Corum didn't quite live up to what I thought he could be last year. Always more time, but that's why I give the slight edge to Seattle. I prefer their running back room. For the debate, Ken Walker versus Kyren Williams, it's close. If Kyren had if Ken Walker had the Rams offensive line, his numbers, I think, would look closer to Kyren's. It's real close, but Charbonnet definitely greater than sign Blake Corum. And then I got the Cardinals. James Conner, Trey Benson. It's a fine room, but James Conner's not close to the tier of Christian McCaffrey by any means, and I would still pretty clearly take Ken Walker and Kyron Williams over him in my mind. And Trey Benson kind of falls into that Blake Corum tier where it's like, rookie season, didn't get a ton of opportunities. I'm not going to judge him completely, but as we go into this year, I'm not taking him highly. Next, we move into the wide receiver tiers, and I'm going to have the Rams first tier, and I don't think that that should come as a surprise. Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, to me, is the best wide receiver duo in all of football. I think it's two top 10 guys. Puka, we talked about it on the wide receiver video that came out yesterday with me and Javon, but if this guy had played last year, you're looking at 130 plus receptions and 1,600 plus yards. If you statted out what he did last year when he did play to a 17 game season, the guy is an absolute beast. One of the best route runners, if not the best route runner in football, has phenomenal hands. And I think Devontae Adams still absolutely has it. I still think he's a top 10 guy. And I think you're going to see that in this Rams offense with McVay, with Stafford, playing alongside Puka. His time in the Raiders, I don't think it ever really worked out there, but I still think that Devontae Adams from 2021, he's still 85 to 90% of that guy, and that to me is still a top 10 wide receiver in football. And then I like Tutu Atwell as their 3. They committed some money to him. Obviously a speedster, been in the system for quite a minute. Then I'm going to take the Niners here. I like Ayuk. We'll see how he recovers from the ACL, but again, this is a guy 2 years ago who was really, really good, and he earned the money that he was paid from this team. Absolutely. He had a 1,300 plus yard season. He played really, really solid football. I like Jawan Jennings. I like Slick Ricky Pearsall. They brought in Demarcus Robinson, so it's also a deep wide receiver room. Absolutely. I don't think it has the top end talent of the Rams, which is why I lean LA, but San Francisco has a really solid wide receiver room here as well. Then I'm going to take the Seattle Seahawks. Jackson Smith and Jigba had his breakout season last year. The guy proved to be the number 1 on the team. That's why they were willing to let go of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. They bring in Cooper Kupp, who I have some real question marks about his health, but when he's out there, he's still pretty productive, still a really solid route runner, decent hands. It's a fine wide receiver room. They bring in Marquez Valdez-Scantling as a deep threat, so it's fine. I question a little bit about how JSN and Kupp will play together, but in terms of talent in the room, it's certainly up there. And then Arizona, Marvin Harrison Jr., I think it's a little overstated how disappointing his rookie season was, but I don't think it was the most amazing rookie season ever. You factor that in with, some of the other guys that are there, Michael Wilson, who I do think is a bit underrated, and Greg Dortch. It just doesn't stack up to these other NFC West wide receiver rooms, but we'll see if Marv can, kind of move the needle and prove to be, I think his ceiling this season, he could honestly become the 2nd or 3rd best wide receiver in this division. Next, we move to the tight end room, and give me the Niners here. I think George Kittle is the best tight end in all of football. I'll stand 10 toes down on that, especially when you consider what he brings to the game as a blocker. He really is a 6th offensive lineman for the San Francisco 49ers at times, but he's still a phenomenal receiving threat. Had one of his best seasons last year and really stepped up in a big way for that 49ers passing attack with Brandon Ayuk hurt, Deebo Samuel declining, the injury to Ricky Pearsall, etc. George Kittle was really the only consistent weapon, I guess, outside of Jawan Jennings that Brock Purdy had. I still think Kittle's an absolute beast. I'll take Trey McBride second, though. I do think there is a world where in 1 to 3 seasons, McBride is viewed as the best tight end in all of football. Not an amazing blocker, but a really good receiving threat. Obviously, I expect the touchdown numbers to get back to normal this upcoming season for him, but these are 2 elite tight ends, whereas the other 2 teams in this division don't have that. Give me the Rams here in 3rd. Tyler Higbee, I still really like. Colby Parkinson, Terrence Ferguson, the kid that they drafted out of Oregon. So it's a deeper tight end room. It doesn't have the high-end, top-end talent of the Niners and Cardinals, but I do think it's really solid. And then I'll take the Seahawks with Noah Fant and Elijah Arroyo. These are 4 really solid tight end rooms. I wouldn't be disappointed if I was any team. I know I put you last here, Seattle, but I think Noah Fant and Arroyo could be a pretty solid combo for you guys. Up next, we move to offensive line, and give me the Rams as the best O-line in this division. I do think that the top 3 teams are very close. I want to say that right here. If you want to order the top 3 teams in this, however you want, be my guest. I have the Rams number 1 because I really do like what they're building. I think that their interior offensive line with guys like Dotson has really improved. They're a really, really good run blocking offensive line. They've been improving. Give me the Cardinals at second. I like the tackle combination of Williams and Paris Johnson. I think Paris Johnson is really starting to develop into what this team wanted and expected him to be. And then I got the Niners in third. Trent Williams is obviously still one of the premier tackles in all of football when he's healthy. The two losses to the offensive line is kind of why I dinged them down a little bit. Aaron Banks was never perfect, but I do think Jalen Moore is a big loss. San Francisco wanted to retain this guy for a reason. He was kind of the successor, if you will, to Trent Williams at left tackle. He was the guy that they wanted protecting Brock Purdy for the future. They do end up losing him. He goes over to Kansas City, so that stinks. And then Seattle. You listen, they drafted Gray Zabel and they finally started addressing the interior offensive line, which I do think is a good sign, but I think that there's still a lot of pieces to go when it comes to fixing this Seattle Seahawks offensive line, and I don't expect it to be fixed overnight. I do think that they made the right steps this offseason, but I just don't think that they're ready to be viewed as one of the better offensive lines in their own division, let alone the NFL. And I think it could really lead to their downfall this season. Moving on to defense now, and however, if Seattle's not going to have a downfall, it's that defense. I think their defense is clear cut and away the best in this division. I think that they may have a top 5 defense in all of the sport at this point in time. I really like their defensive line with DeMarcus Lawrence and Leonard Williams and some of the pieces that they have there. They have one of the more dangerous secondaries in all of football. Julian Love at safety, Reek Woolen, and a guy that I think could be a top 5 corner in Devin Witherspoon. You see that Mike McDonald has really shaped this defense. They play aggressive. They lay the hit sticks. This is a really, really fun defensive unit and going to be the best part of the Seattle Seahawks next season. And despite the flashy moves of Cooper Kupp and Sam Darnold, this is a defensive-led football team. Now things get interesting. We move into the next best defense. I'm going to give the slight, edge to the Los Angeles Rams here. I do like what they're building. They got a lot of young guys, Hitchens, Curl, Fisk, Verse. Verse is going to be an absolute beast in this league, no doubt about it. I love the Poona Ford signing. I think that their run defense was a problem last year, and Poona Ford is a hell of a bandage to your run defense problem. I expect them to improve just in terms of the talent getting better, and some of the guys that they brought in I thought were key players. If they could have gotten Ramsey back, they really could have competed with Seattle for best defense in this division. The Cardinals and the Niners, I think, are particularly pretty close. I'm going to lean the Cardinals here, and it's not shade at the 49ers. I think the 49ers could have a fine defense. I just have some real question marks about their secondary. Aside from Muhammad, who I think is an absolute dog in that secondary, I have some question marks, especially with some of the legal stuff going on with Diamonor Lenore. Obviously, they lost Charvarius Ward this offseason. He had to leave the Bay Area for personal reasons. I get it, but it does suck for the Niners. They're working on building that defensive line, and I think they're doing a really solid job of it. And you give Robert Saleh another year and another draft, and I think the defense could be back to where it was a couple years ago when they went to the Super Bowl. But you lose Hufanga, you lose Charvarius Ward, you lose Dre Greenlaw, and you start drafting guys and bringing guys in. It's just a bit of a turnover on the defensive side. And for the Cardinals, man, their pass rush was a problem last year. You think Darius Robinson's going to take a step forward. You bring in a Josh Sweat, you draft a Walter Nolan, and all of a sudden that defensive line looks really, really solid. Your secondary was already pretty sweet last year with Budda Baker kind of leading the charge. I loved the Will Johnson draft pick. Cardinals defense, one of the more underrated in all of football. And then we get to the head coaches. And to me, this is a pretty crisp, clear-cut ranking. Give me Sean McVay. I still think Sean McVay is a top 3 head coach in all of the sport. The guy has revolutionized his offense not once, but twice to being one of the better ones in football, a really solid play caller. I trust him in the big spots, and he's proven to be able to win the big game. Kyle Shanahan, number 2, the guy may be one of the only coaches in football, maybe Kevin O'Connell as well, where I feel pretty confident that if he's the coach of my team, we're just going to have a top 15 offense, regardless of personnel, because his scheme is that damn good. Niners fans I've heard this chatter a lot, so I'm going to kind of repeat it here. Can he coach in the big game? A lot of people think that Shanahan lost them that Super Bowl 2 years ago to Kansas City. Not my take, but it's what I've heard from Niners fans. And then I'm going to go Mike McDonald and Jonathan Gannon. If you're a Cardinals fan trying to flip this around, so be it. Both young defensive head coaches got hired around the same time. This is really just more a gut instinct of who do I believe in going forward. For me, that's Mike McDonald, but not a lot of track record to go off of here. But guys, this is just my thought for the NFC West tier list. Be sure to leave yours in the comment section down below. I appreciate you guys' support. If you love the NFL and you're not yet subscribed to this YouTube channel, hit that button. I'll catch you next time. Peace.